who, when they left, those former Africans left here about 100,000 years ago. Until 100,000 years ago, this present man was living only in Africa. But they left about 100,000 years ago, and when they went into the cold climates of the north, they had no need for melanin, so eventually they lost the black pigmentation. And that's how you get all these different colors. The yellow, the Chinese, the whites, the Europeans, the brown, the Indians. And the Chinese had to adapt more specifically to their climate there, to have small eyes. If you go and stay in China with the big eyes of our women here, big, macho makubwa, the cold wind will take out the. After a long period, you may not survive. So therefore, Africa, it's a long story, but I'm just touching on the main points. Africa is the origin of man. Africa is the pioneer for civilization. Civilization started here. The Egyptian civilization, 5,000 years ago, was here in Africa. Then later on, civilization spread to Greece, to Rome, and so on. Africa is the one which protected the modern religions at some crucial points. If you remember the story in the Bible of the children of Jacob who sold their brother Joseph into slavery, and then when there was famine in Palestine, all the children of Jacob came and joined their half-brother Joseph in Egypt, and they were able to survive. And they stayed there for many years until later on they were rescued by Moses. So again, you have Africa saving those people at a crucial point. When Jesus was born, you remember, the King Herod ordered that all the young children should be killed because he was worried, because somebody had told him that a new king had been born. So Herod said, kill all the children of such an age. Where does Joseph and Mary, where do they take Jesus? They hide him in Egypt until the danger is over. That is Africa. Again, playing a very crucial role. Much later, when Muhammad had problems with his Arabs, they wanted to kill him. Where does Muhammad run to? Ethiopia. That's why he stays until the situation is better in Arabia, and he goes back. So this is Africa, the origin of man, the pioneer of civilization, the protector of modern religious movements at crucial periods. Yet this Africa, in the last 600 years, has gone through many problems. What are these problems? The slave trade ravaged Africa for many years. Many people perished in that trade. Up to today, if you go to the US, you will find black people there. If you go to the Caribbean, you find the black people there. If you go to Brazil, all those black people are there. They were taken there as slaves. Then there was colonialism. After, there is one of the scholars, Dr. Rodney, whom one of your people, your professors here, Migot, would know. He wrote a book entitled How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Or rather, he could even have said, How Africa Developed Europe. The free labor of slaves is part of the efforts that liberated Europe from poverty. So that slavery went on for many years, and when slavery later on was found to no longer be profitable, when machines were invented during the early part of the Industrial Revolution, it was found that it was easier to use machines than to use unwilling laborers, slaves. So then the Europeans became Christian again, and they launched an anti-slavery movement. And that's how the African the slaves were emancipated. But when the slaves were emancipated in the US and in the Caribbean, then the Europeans came here and now turned us into semi-slaves in the form of colonialism. Then after colonialism, we had now neo-colonialism. If you analyze each of these phenomenon, you will be able to get a long story at each stage. We had genocide in different parts of Africa. In Namibia, some of the people were almost wiped out. The Herero were almost wiped out for resisting colonialism. In Uganda, some of our people called the Banyoro, whose king resisted colonialism for a long time, Kabarega. They suffered a lot of suffering. Up to now, the population of Bunyoro has never fully recovered. Poverty in the era of affluence, because the modern age is the age of affluence. Certain populations in the world are affluent, they are rich. But Africa is still in poverty. So you have poverty in the era of affluence. And where is it found? In Africa. Underdevelopment, you still find it in Africa. And yet, certain parts of the world have gone through 3 industrial revolutions. The first revolution was the invention of the steam engines, the use of steam engines. The second revolution was electricity and the rail transport. And the third revolution was the use of electronics in the 1960s. The third revolution. We are now entering the 4th revolution of artificial intelligence, where intelligent machines are threatening to replace the human beings in the workplace. Now, all this is going on, but Africa is still underdeveloped. Marginalization. If you look at the figures of global trade, Africa now is very, 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 very low, very small contribution to global trade, even smaller than it was in the past. You come to political influence, Africa's influence is very low. The other time the Europeans attacked Libya, Africa objected, but the Europeans ignored Africa and went on and attacked Libya. And as you hear, Libya is now in chaos up to today. And that chaos of Libya has spread to the rest of the Sahel region, to Niger, to Mali, to Burkina Faso, to Cameroon, to Nigeria. And this was on account of something we advised the Europeans not to do, but they ignored us and went ahead and did it. This is political marginalization. So the question is, what happened? How could the first be last and for so long? Because you remember when I started, Africa was the first here, first there, first there. Then somehow, 600 years ago, we started getting all these calamities, and we are still going through the same calamities. Now, the story of Africa is a long one. I don't have time to go through all of it. But fortunately, I'm in the bad habit of writing, and I have written about all this. For instance, how is it that Africa has lagged behind other continents for so long? Now for 600 years, Africa is lagging behind. There are reasons why this happened, but we don't have time to go through them. However, there are different booklets which I will hand to your leaders. You can read those reasons. There are reasons why Africa, first of all, was colonized, and why it has lagged behind for so long. But one of them, which I could mention, was that while Africa had scored many firsts, as I told you, one of the weaknesses was political balkanization. We did not have a unified government. You would have clans controlling small areas, sometimes some kingdoms, small kingdoms. Like in my area there, we had a small king there in Ankore, but those poor Wanyankore called him Rubambansi, the controller of the whole world. They thought the whole world was their little place called Ankore. So that's one of the reasons, but you need to study it more. But what is crucial for us, for the purpose of this lecture, is that because of these weaknesses, which I don't have time to go into, by 1900, the whole of Africa had been colonized, except for Ethiopia and Liberia. By 1900, the whole continent of Africa had been taken over by the colonialists. And as you know, Africa is very huge. Africa is about 12 million square miles. You can fit the United States into Africa 4 times. No, 3 times it will fit there, United States. You can fit China into Africa. No, 4 times actually, 4 times. Because USA is 3 million square miles. Africa is 12 million square miles. So you can fit United States into Africa 4 times. You can fit China into Africa 4 times. You can fit India into Africa 12 times. And it will fit there. However, this huge continent by 1900 had been taken over by foreigners. So, you the modern generation, I know you are .com, you are busy following what's happening in music and dance and football, but I think you should put aside time to follow about the history of your continent. Because if you don't, you may get into problems in the future, like happened in the past. So what is crucial now, for this purpose, for the lecture of today, is to simply say, whatever the weaknesses were, the consequences were that by 1900, the whole of Africa had been colonized, except for Ethiopia and Liberia. Liberia had been created by the United States as a place where to dump slaves after they were no longer wanted in the United States. That's why Liberia had been carved out. But otherwise, the whole of Africa had been colonized. Now, being colonized was very risky, because when your land is taken over by other people, because they are strong and you are weak, it's very risky. You are now at the mercy of those people. They can kill you, they can do whatever they want, because you are weak. You are not able to defend yourself. You are not able to defend your sovereignty. You are not able to defend your dignity. That's what happened with Africa. And many of the people who were colonized never survived. If you go to the USA now, you look for the original Americans, they are very difficult to find. They were called the Red Indians. But if you go there today, you can't see them. I have been to America many, many times. I have never seen a Red Indian, not even one. I don't know where they live. The people you see are other people, Europeans, Africans, who came from other continents and took over the land of the indigenous people. The indigenous people disappeared. If you go to South America, the same story. In many countries of South America, the indigenous people disappeared. If you go to Australia, it is the same story. Many of the indigenous people, they are there. Those ones you can see, those black people in Australia, the Aborigines, but they are not in a good situation. They are few, first of all, and they are not in a good situation. However, Africans do not die easily. This is one good quality of the Africans. They have got all sorts of problems, but dying, they don't die easily. So the Africans were able to survive the horror of colonialism. And we were able to survive, as I told you, mainly because we are very resilient. We have got very strong genes, but we have also got an advanced civilization. Because one of the reasons why we survived, and the Red Indians could not survive, because part of the problem for the American Indians, why they died in big numbers, was that they could not resist the diseases the Europeans brought. Many of them died from the diseases caused by the Europeans. However, in our case, because of our advanced civilization, we had already been inoculated by our cows, because you remember we were staying with our cows in our houses, with our goats, with our chicken, and the closer, the better. You know, sometimes you stay with them in the huts. So they were inoculating us, giving us the microbes that would make our system immune. And when these foreigners brought their diseases, we survived. We could not die from those diseases. So we survived. Not only did we survive, but eventually, because of the reasons which you will read in some of these documents, we were able to get our freedom back. There are reasons why we got our freedom eventually. One of the reasons was, of course, the resistance by our leaders. Jomo Kenyatta, Mwalimu Nyerere, Azikiwe, Nkrumah, Dedan Kimathi, all those who resisted. And the later ones, the ones who came later. It was one of the reasons why eventually we got our freedom back. But there were also other reasons. For instance, there was the reason of the socialist countries, China and Soviet Union, backed us in that struggle. Another reason why we were able to get our independence back was that the Europeans became too greedy, and fortunately they started fighting among themselves. In the First World War and in the Second World War, they really killed each other over us, because they were fighting over us. They were fighting over us. That's a little story which I could go back and bring out. You know, Germany, this Germany which you see today, was not one country until 1871. That's when Germany was united. Before that, Germany was 39 kingdoms. Prussia, Saxony, Bavaria, etc. 39 of them. They were all Germans, but not under one governance, under different princes. But there was a German movement to unite the Germans from Prussia, led by a group of people called Junkers. Junkers were big farmers who needed a big market, and led by Bismarck. So those people pushed for pan-Germanism. And eventually Germany got united in 1871 after the Franco-Prussian War of 1870, when they fought with the French and the Germans defeated them. Germany became one unit. So once it became one unit, remember 1870, the British, the French, the Dutch, the Holland, the Portuguese, The Spanish had already captured many colonies in Africa, not in Africa so much, but in India, in Asia, Indonesia, in South America. So when Germany became strong, after it was united, it brought a complaint, a grievance. Wajerumani, what do you call a grievance in Swahili? Malalamiko. Malalamiko, yes. My Swahili is coming back. Wajerumani walileta malalamiko yao. And what were their malalamiko? What were their complaints? You, our cousins, the Europeans, you have cheated us. You have got more colonies than us. Why? We also want colonies. So, moto ulianza kuchamuka. So they said, please, Bismarck, please, don't fight. Don't fight. Usipigane. Ita muktano. You call a conference. So Bismarck called a conference in Berlin in 1884, 85. So where they said, okay, Bismarck, now don't cause trouble, please. Wacha tugawanye vizuri. Now, you Bismarck, you take Tanganyika, take Rwanda, take Burundi, take Namibia, take a part of Cameroon and Togo. So Bismarck said, afadhali, at least. But when Bismarck was no longer in power, the people who came after him, they said, Bismarck alikuwa mjinga. Why did he accept just Tanganyika? Nyinyi Waingereza mnachukua the whole of India and Pakistan. You the Holland, small Holland, you take the whole of Indonesia. You small Portugal, you take the whole of Brazil. And you the Spanish, you are in the whole of South America, and you give me Tanganyika and Burundi. No way. Wacha tupigane. That's how the First World War started. Then it was like a draw. Of course, we also fought in those wars, fighting for the Germans, fighting others for the British. But the fighting was not conclusive, so they went for the second round, the Second World War. So in those fights, they weakened one another. That was good. They weakened one another. And if you notice, some of the people who were fighting for freedom here, like Dida and Kimathi, were former soldiers. We were former soldiers who had been used by the British. So that was not only the British, even the others were using them. So therefore, for a number of reasons, eventually we got our freedom back. Now, when we were fighting for freedom, that's where I want to come and conclude. When we were fighting for freedom, we had one word first, to acknowledge that in spite of 500 years of disruption by Europeans, the Africans had survived. They had not perished like the Red Indians or the Aborigines in Australia. So that was point number one. But number two, so our agenda now for freedom, for the resistance, was that what is number one? Because the other one was just noting the fact. Because our survival was not planned, it was because of the strength of our genes. So nobody can claim that except our heritage, our culture. But for the freedom fighters, 5 words. Number one, were to regain our independence. So, independence. The foreigners go away. The other day, I was happy to ride in a train from Mombasa up to Nairobi here. And the train was given a good name called Madaraka. It's a train from self-determination. Self-determination has produced a modern train to replace the old colonial one. So, number one, independence. That was part of our elders' agenda, like Jomo Kenyatta. They were fighting for independence. Number two, democracy. Remember, the Africans had never had democracy, even under the chiefs. Because under the chiefs, we had no democracy. Under the colonialists, we had no democracy. So, we were therefore, the second point in our struggle, our elders' struggle, was for democracy. One person, one vote, by secret ballot, at regular intervals. But the third element in our agenda was prosperity for the African people. Remember this? Remember that when Europe was going through the Industrial Revolution, when the Europeans were inventing machines, well, first of all, the Europeans used slavery to get them out of poverty. But after the slaves, they invented machines, which they used in the Industrial Revolution to get out of poverty. For us, we missed the Industrial Revolution. We had missed the Industrial Revolution. So therefore, independence, the anti-colonial movement, first of all, as I said, independence. Secondly, democracy. But number three had to be prosperity. Ustawi wa jamii. That's how we translate it into Swahili. Ustawi wa jamii. How the people can live well. How the people can live well. But how can you live well in the modern way? How do you live well? Me, I am a cattle keeper. Mimi ni mfugaji wa ng'ombe. Ndio asili yangu. I am a cattle keeper. So how can I be prosperous with my cows? That is, I should learn how to farm in the modern way, produce milk, produce beef, and sell them in a modern way. That's how I can be able to be prosperous, to get income so that I build a better house, I get a better means of transport, I educate my children, etc. But the problem I have is that the Banyankole, my tribe, they are also cattle keepers. They keep cows, I keep cows. When I produce milk, they don't buy from me, I don't buy from them. When we produce beef, they don't buy from me, I don't buy from them. Why? Because they also have what I have. We also produce bananas in that area. But we are all producing bananas. This Munyankore does not buy bananas from me, I don't buy from him. But in the morning when we meet on the road, we talk in our local language. Orereji, orereji, orereji. But orereji is not solving the problem of prosperity. I need somebody to buy my milk and buy my beef, buy my bananas so that I have money. But just greet me in my tribal language or religion doesn't help me. So that's why, therefore, in order to address prosperity, we had to address the issue of tribalism. We had to answer the question, what is more important? Identity or interests? What is more important? Asili au maslahi in Swahili, if you want to put it in Swahili. Yeah. You can say, asili yangu mimi ni Munyankore. Asante sana. Lakini hiyo imekusaidia nini? Imekusaidia nini juu ya ustawi wa jamii? That's why, therefore, we in Uganda, because when we got independence, the question of the agenda was totally mixed up. People were not prepared. People were not prepared. So they now started fighting over the government jobs. Wanaanza kupigania vyeo vya serikali. Waziri, these DCs, that's what they were called, civil servants, walianza kupigania hivyo vyeo. And in order to fight for those, they formed parties based on identity. Vyama ambavyo vimesimama kwenye asili, identity. In particular, we had 3 parties. One party was for the Catholics, called DP, Democratic Party. Another party was for the Protestants, called UPC. The one of Obote, because stupid things. Catholic, Protestant, what does that have to do with politics? Lakini kwa sababu mtu hana cha kusema, he's not prepared. He has not, because remember, ideology is like medicine. You've got a faculty of medicine here. You must diagnose the sickness of the patient. It is the diagnosis which gives you the prescription. If you diagnose wrongly, then the patient will never be cured. Yeah, because the prescription will be wrong. So we had to diagnose what were the problems of Africa. What were they? That's why our answer was, number 1, independence. Let's get our freedom back. Number 2, democracy. But number 3, ustawi wa jamii. Prosperity. But how do you get prosperity? That's how people got lost. They now said, now, for me to be prosperous, I organize a party based on identity. Because we had the 3 parties. One was for Catholics, another one was for Protestants, another one was for one of the tribes in Uganda called the Baganda. So there were 3 parties, all sectarian, based on identity. But you have seen, the Banyankore cannot help me. Because me, I'm looking for prosperity. Now, who are the people who would help me in my prosperity? The people of Kampala, many of whom are not Banyankore, who buy my milk, and buy my beef, and buy my bananas. That's how I get money. That's how I get prosperity. If you come and visit me and you find I have built a good house, please don't thank the Banyankore. Thank the people of Kampala who have bought my things, and I'm able to build a good house. That's why, therefore, we say that in order to get prosperity, we must push the ideology of patriotism, loving Uganda instead of living just Ankole. Lazima niwe na moyo wa Uganda. Na roho, moyo is Uganda. Lazima niwe na roho na fikra za Uganda. Za Uganda. That's what we call patriotism. Patriotism, loving your country. But then, unfortunately, much as I love Uganda, the Ugandans are only 41 million now. They have done everything possible. They have married many women. But they are now only 41 million. And in my line of production of milk, we were not producing milk in the past, but we are now producing 2.7 billion liters of milk. The Ugandans are drinking only 800 million. So there is a surplus already of 1.9 billion liters of milk. So Uganda, although it has tried to help me in my prosperity, is not enough to sustain my prosperity because the production is much bigger than this demand. That's why, therefore, we say, no. We must think Pan-Africanist. We must think in a Pan-African way. We must work for the economic integration of East Africa. We must work for the economic integration of COMESA. We must work for the economic integration of the whole of Africa. Not because I love Africans. Even if I didn't care about them, I only cared about Banyankore. For the sake of their prosperity, wacha huyu mtoto analetea kahawa yangu. Don't worry about coffee. Coffee can go very well with the speech. Detaka meza mshu. Thank you. So, in order to ensure the prosperity of our people, we had to work for the economic integration of East Africa, of Africa. It's really amazing how people can be blind. You take a country like India, or even China. Let's start with China. China has got a land area of 3 million square miles. It has got a population of 1.3 billion. So they have got a big internal market of 1.3 billion people. However, that internal market is not enough. That's why China is dying to export to the US. You have seen the war between the US and China. When Gombana, you are selling more to me than I'm selling to you. So you can see China with an internal sure market of 1.3 billion. In order to ensure the prosperity of its people, that internal market is not enough. They still need the market of America, they need the market of Africa, they need the market of other places for their people to be prosperous. Lakini sisi hapa Afrika, mimi nakuwa pale Uganda na watu wangu 41 milioni, natosheka sana. I think I have arrived. That is a disaster. That is blindness which will lead to a catastrophe. So that's why we are saying that the medicine for prosperity is economic integration of East Africa, of the whole of Africa, but also using that power, because with the big internal market, like China now, with the big internal market, you can now negotiate for access to even the third-party markets. When you are negotiating with the US, you unamtisha kama hunuruhusu kufanya hiki na mimi sitakuruhusu kufanya hiki. Trade negotiation is about threats. Kutishana. If you don't do this for me, I will not do that for you. But if you don't have the clout to bargain, what will you say? How will Uganda go to China now and say, China, he will just ignore me. Thank you very much, escort. So, therefore, our agenda, independence, democracy, prosperity through economic integration of Africa. But there is another issue, which is number 4, security. How can Africa be secure? How can we be sure that Africa will never be colonized again? When we started this issue, we found that economic integration is not enough. Yes, economic integration will help us to develop economically. However, even when you develop economically and you modernize, you may not be secure globally. What examples do we have? In the Second World War, the first victims of aggression from Germany were the highly developed countries of Holland, of Belgium, of Denmark, of Norway. Even France was captured, of Poland. All those countries were developed, but they were not secure. They turned out not to be secure. Even today, you can get a country like Israel. Israel is highly advanced technologically. It is a technological superpower, but as you see normally, it has got the backing of the US. The US has always come in, threaten Iran, threaten this, threaten this. Yeah. So the modernization of Israel is not enough to guarantee its security in that corner of the world, which has got a lot of issues. You look at South Korea. South Korea is a very developed country, technologically. But up to now, American troops are in South Korea because, and the American fleet is in the ocean, guaranteeing the freedom, the security of South Korea, because that is a dangerous corner of the world to be in. It is not a place where the weak are welcome. So, and to make matters worse, you hear some of the people like our relatives, the Americans, because you know the Americans are our relatives. There are many black people there, and one of them was president recently, and I heard that he came from nearby here. So the Americans, they talk of 4-dimensional superiority. four-dimensional superiority, meaning they want to be superior on land, in land army, want to be superior in the air force, want to be superior at sea, navy. They want also to be superior in space, in the skies, in the heavens. So the question then is, where does that leave Africa? Where does that leave Africa? That's why we say, can Uganda, even if Uganda develops, because Uganda is developing, it will become a developed country. But can Uganda go to space even when it is developed? Can we afford it? We cannot afford it. So therefore, that's why we bring in a fourth word: political integration. The answer for security is political integration. Specifically, the Federation of East Africa. Some of our leaders at independence were talking of the Federation. You can bring those papers. That newspaper, I will show you. They were talking of the political federation of East Africa at independence. Some people are talking about the federation of the whole of Africa. That was Nkrumah. Nkrumah was talking about the federation of the whole of Africa. I, however, didn't support the idea of the political integration of the whole of Africa. Economic integration, yes. I can trade with anybody. I can trade with anybody from Egypt, from Morocco, from where? Because trade is trade. He said to me, I also said to him, that's good. But political integration must be among people who are close, who are either similar or compatible. I don't want to be together with somebody with whom I'm not compatible or I'm not similar. We are not similar. So therefore, that's why for political integration, working for federation, we like the Federation of East Africa. Why? First of all, these are the same people. Bantus. The other day I was in, when I come here and I hear the Kikuyu say, Ndikuya. These people are speaking my language. Then I go to Western Kenya, and those people say, Mulembe. I say Mulembe also, I answer them, because I know what they are talking about. Makua, Malai. Those are my people. Then you go to, the other day, I saw a young girl in Kampala who had come for a conference. I said, what's your name? She said her name was Kwambuka. Kwambuka, where are you from? That is from Kenya. Kenya where? Said Kisii. I said, what does the word Kwambuka mean in your language? The young girl didn't know because she was .com. You know, these .coms don't. But there was an old woman. There was an old woman who was from the same area. When they asked her, she said, no, Kwambuka means to cross. Kuvuka. In Kisii. That's what exactly it means in my language. So you have these Bantus. You have the Ateso in Uganda. You have the Ateso here. You have the Turkana in Uganda with the Karamojong on the other side. The other day I met the Minister Munyes and I greeted him in Karamojong, Mata, Alakaranoi, a joke. So these are the same people. But above all, we have the neutral language of Swahili. The neutral language of Swahili. The Europeans in the European Union are stuck. You can see the European Union is now having problems. They cannot unite beyond where they have reached now, because they have got rivalry of languages. Which language will you speak in the European Union? Are you going to speak German? If you speak German, how about French? How about English? But here we don't have that problem. Apart from English, we can use Swahili, all of us. It is a Bantu dialect. It is easy to learn. Even the people of the coast who came from Yemen and those places, they also contributed. So we can have a political federation. Now that is the answer. Now once we have a political federation, then East Africa now can be able to send, after some time, can be able to send satellite in space and ask the Americans, what are you doing here? Mnafanya nini hapa? Na Warusi, na wanini. Because everybody, the Americans have gone to the moon, the Russians have gone, the Chinese have gone, the Indians have gone to the moon. The only ones who are here are the Africans. As usual. This is not acceptable. This is very dangerous. So that is the fourth point. Strategic security will come through political integration. But number 5, and finally, is the question of the people we are uniting economically and politically. Who are they? These are people who are the same, who are similar or linked. You hear those confused people talking about different tribes of Africa. But in reality, if you study the language groups, in Africa there are only 4 language groups. There's what we call the Niger-Congo group of languages. These are the Bantu dialects. Bantu dialects and the dialects of West Africa, the Igbo and so on. These are all, they are put in the Niger-Congo group of languages. That's why I can pick words from all these Bantu dialects all the way up to South Africa. Then you have the Nilo-Saharan. Nilo-Saharan is the language like the Somalis, the Nilotics like Luo. They are in that group. Then you have the Afro-Asiatic, Arabic, and some of the languages in northern Ethiopia. Then finally you have the Khoisan language in southern Africa. So the people who are trying to unite are actually people who are either, but even between the Niger-Congo and, for instance, the Nilotic language, you have linkages. Like in Uganda, you can have linkages between the Acholi and the Bantu dialects. The Somalis, when I was in Somalia, I asked them, I said, what do you call a cow? The Somalis call a cow sa. In Uganda, the cow dung. And that's why I normally tell the Swahili speakers, lazima muje bara tuwasaidie na maneno zaidi, kwa sababu ni Swahili Some of the words are not there. I don't know what the Swahili is called cow dung. Unasema mavi ya ng'ombe. Oh, that's terrible. Because we the cattle keepers don't call the droppings of a cow mavi. We don't call it mavi. Mavi ni ya watu, sio ya ng'ombe. We have a word for droppings of the cow, the droppings of the goat, droppings of the chicken, different words. Kurebara, we have got different words. Now, the word for the cow dung in our language is sa, obusa. Obusa, amasa, exactly what the Somalis call the cow. So you can see the linkages. So therefore, the people we are uniting are people who are either similar or linked. So therefore, the fifth word is fraternity. Fraternity. Exploit the fraternity of Africa to build our strength. Therefore, the 5 words: independence, democracy, prosperity through economic integration, strategic security through political integration, all this on the basis of fraternity. These are my 5 words which brought me here. This was the Uganda Argus. This was the paper of Uganda of June 6th, 1963. You have the picture of Mwalimu Nyerere, of Milton Obote, and Mzee Kenyatta. And I'm going to give this to your Vice Chancellor. And the headline here was Federation this year. Federation 1963. That was the plan. But unfortunately, some of the people developed cold feet, and we missed that opportunity. Now, one of the mistakes, the one who was later reluctant, were the leadership of Uganda, Milton Obote, because he had some issues. And as a consequence of that, we had so many problems. The chaos in Uganda, the chaos in Rwanda, the chaos in Burundi, all those would never have happened if we had formed that federation that time. Because now, you can see a problem like in Somalia. That problem can be solved. But because we are not allowed by law, international law, to go there because this is another country, we can't do anything. We just watch. If you try to go there, you are interfering in the internal affairs of another country. The other day when you are fighting here, among yourselves, you wanted to come out, but you can't go because that's another country. So, the mistake in 1963 was that we allowed Uganda, which had problems within their leadership, to veto the idea of the East African Federation. My idea is that that should not happen. We are now discussing in Arusha. We have formed a committee But you should also be discussing it among yourselves here. Okay, I know you are talking about football and music and watching, but also talk about your future, about your destiny as the future of Africa. So on the issue of economic or political federation, one of the options should be, if some of the members are not yet ready for some reason, then let those which are ready go ahead, rather than be paralyzed. Because in my language, we say, the one who waits when you are hunting an animal, and you wait for the whole animal to come out of the bush, you may end up spearing the spear, the tail. You may end up spearing the tail. While if you throw when the head has just come out, you have got a chance that you may hit the animal here in the chest. Also the English, you know, the English are not very good at proverbs, but they have one good one. It says, procrastination is the thief of time. When you delay too much, you may miss your target. So those are my 5 words. Independence, democracy, prosperity through economic integration, strategic security through political integration where possible, and finally, all this around fraternity. I thank you and I wish you good luck.